Hi, it's me, Ingrid INFP, and this is kind of a really windy day, really stormy, but it's warm. I don't know what's going on. I'm sitting on some wet moss. I went to Stockholm last weekend and I had some Loop earplugs, non-sponsored, but you know, I think it was a lifesaver, let's just say. I hope that you guys can hear me over the wind, because this is very windy. Anyway, I've been reading To ADHD by Jessica McCabe, and it's been an enlightening book, let's just say. She talks about all sorts of issues that an ADHD person can have, and she has a lot of tips and tools for different areas, from forgetting things to organizing your time to, you know, that are compassionate to ADHD people specifically, rather than just like, you know, be efficient with your time, you know, which doesn't really help ADHD people. So, I was reading the last chapter of that book, and she talked about self-growth is not the goal here. The goal is self-fulfillment. And also, it's not as important to learn how to do things, but learning what is worth it, you know? And going towards meaning rather than towards just developing abilities, you know? And that's quite inspiring, because, you know, you'd think like, okay, so ADHD is a disability, so I need to compensate for all of these problems that this disability is causing me, when actually it's more about like a shifting of perspectives into like, well, I need to find what gives me meaning, what gives my life meaning, and work towards those goals, rather than like just what's expected of you to live an okay life. You know, maybe I will never be great at organizing my room. I can try to make things better in order to achieve my own goals, which is having a healthy environment in order to feel inspired to, for example, do art or that kind of thing. So in that case, I need to work on those skills of organization in order for me to fulfill my other goals. But the goal isn't to become an organized person, you know? And all sorts of things like that. Also, it takes into account that some people have certain abilities that other people don't, and that's okay. And it doesn't matter how hard you work at sometimes you will not be as good as somebody else at that. So I'm a doctor. I'm not expecting other people to become doctors, you know? But I don't know how to drive a bike, and I don't know how to drive a car. Ride a bike. And I don't need to learn how to drive a car, even though it's something that is expected in a society. Because I live in an area where I can technically take the train and buses to places. It's more complicated, but it can work. But still, I need to learn how to drive a car for my job, for example. And one of my goals is to become a good doctor, and to become a good doctor, I need to be able to do home visits, and so I need to learn how to drive a car. So for me, the goal of driving a car is not about doing it because that's what adults are supposed to do. The reason I'm doing it is because I have a tangible thing that I need to be able to do in order to be a doctor, which is a goal I want to get to, you know? And not just because of the expectations, it's because that way I will be a better doctor, because I'll be able to go to the patients that need me at their house rather than at my clinic, that can't take themselves to the clinic, you know? I can also use the driving in order to, if I need to help a friend get to the airport or that kind of thing, I would love to be able to do that. But I can't in the state of things right now. And I can't expect myself to have the same natural ability of being able to drive a car because I have certain difficulties. So I never had learning difficulties at school, I learned how to read and write pretty fast, and I got good grades, and I did well. I was academically inclined. And academically inclined does not mean smart, but that's what that's what my school thought, or my teachers thought. They thought that, oh wow, she's so good at school, that means that she's smart. Let's tell her that she's smart. And so that's great. I mean, I was told I was smart, but that wasn't the point. Okay. Wow, there was a lot of wind. But so anyway, I don't know why, at least in France, it wasn't about giftedness and talent and that kind of thing. But it was still a lot about competition, about like who was the best at school and who was the worst, and all of this ranking systems and such. And we're trying to get away from that. But there is such a thing called talent. It's not just about hard work. It's not just about being perseverant and that kind of thing. Some people are just naturally good at certain things more than others, better at learning certain things. I'm not great at learning how to drive. It takes me ages. I keep forgetting what I've learned, and it just goes at such a slow pace that somebody else would have learned how to drive in much shorter time than I have, and would grasp the concept of it, the practical skills of it much better than I do. I have a hard time seeing myself in 3D, so like parking a car is terrible, and even as like the teacher is telling me, oh, did you park the car right? And I open the door to see if there's the line on the ground. It's like I don't even know like where the line is supposed to be, and I'm like looking at in front of me, and I don't know if I'm straight in the parking spot. And yeah, so I'm not really inclined in that sort of intelligence, I guess. But I'm trying. I am trying, but it has taken me more than 5 years. And it sucks because also things expire when a certain amount of time has gone. So, yeah, I've been working at driving for 5 years. I've gone to about 5 different driving schools. And I try, and then I can't, and then I give up, and then I try again, and I give up. And people are like, well, don't give up then. No, okay? I get mad about that, because it's not just about how motivated you are. Sure, there's a big part of that, but there is a certain part of it that is natural skill. And it isn't fun to learn when you don't have any natural skill at it, So I am good. The thing I am good at with driving is learning the rules of the driving. Like I love reading the book of the driving, but I cannot sit in the car and do anything about it. So I've done the driving test 3 times. I've done the theory test twice. The theory test I managed twice. I got good scores on that, and then the practical I've always failed. So I have a hard time with it. I also have a hard time with learning how to bike. And you'd think that biking is like a sort of reflex, and sure it is, but it also took me a long time to drive a bike when I was small, I was almost turning 7 by the time I learned how to ride a bike, and all of my friends knew how to ride a bike, and it's just, it was difficult for me, you know? And if we're focused on self-growth, then I would be spending all my time trying to like do these things that everybody else seems to manage to do naturally. And sure, with practice I would be able to do that, but I would have to spend all of my energy into these certain skills that everybody has, or everybody, I mean most people have, without any attaching any importance to what is actually meaningful for me, you know? I want to spend time on what is meaningful. And why should I not be able to do that, as opposed to people who are naturally good at the things that society tells them you're supposed to be good at, you know? Somebody who learned how to drive a car when they were 18 and did it in 2-3 months, you know, they never have to take the driving test again, you know, unless they lose their license because of some reason. And then they can keep on learning through experience. I have to keep going through driving schools, and you know, why should that person be able to spend their free time on fun stuff, as opposed to me, who has to spend their free time on doing something that I dislike doing, you know, all the time? Why do I always have to work harder to get to a worse result, you know? Because then I'm not even getting the skills, I'm not having any fun doing it either, you know? And I want to be able to, you know, do things that are meaningful in my life. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't work towards self-growth or whatever. I think that we should, but it should be in terms of self-development, self-fulfillment. And another thing that she says in the ADHD book is that we don't need to wait until we are functional. I'm kind of feeling like Pocahontas here with like, can you sing with all the colors of the wind? Right, okay. No, but what she said was that you do not need to wait to be functional in order to live your life. And in order to care for others and for things that you care about. I don't need to get my driver's license and learn how to drive people to the airport in order to show that I care, show that my friends that I care about them. I can care about them in other ways, while I'm still trying to learn how to ride a bike or to drive a car, you know? There are certain people who have dyslexia and who have a terrible time learning how to read. And why should we push them to read difficult books and saying that they're worth less because they can't read certain books, you know? Why should people be worth less because of their abilities? Like, we are worth just from the fact that we're existing as human beings. We shouldn't have to, you know, have certain abilities. And I'm even talking here about, I'm not just talking about hard skills, I'm talking about soft skills as well. Like, some things are more difficult for people, and some people will never be able to develop them at full capacity. Some people have less empathy than others. And sure, they can develop that skill, they can develop a certain sense of compassion, a sense of empathy, but they will never be able to get to the certain sense of empathy that some people just have naturally. And I'm not saying that we should all like stay psychopaths, okay? I think that we should just accept that for certain people the progress is going to be slow. Certain people are going to struggle more with certain things, and we shouldn't demonize them for that. Right. And so I'm learning certain skills, like learning how to book a trip for myself, which, you know, my life was easier without booking these trips, but I'm doing this because I know that it will be meaningful for me to go on these trips. I'm learning to open up to new people, to be more compassionate and open-minded about different ways of living. I think that it's good for me, you know, so I'm learning these things. But there's this thing also about, if you're autistic, learning to be... I remember when I first started medical school, there was a teacher who recommended me to go into Toastmasters, which are basically like public speaking groups, classes. And, you know, for me and my job, public speaking isn't a big thing, you know? It's not something that I need to know how to do. I'm not a CEO of a company. I'm not a scientist who has to present their studies. I'm not a teacher, you know? So that's not a skill that is super meaningful to me. A skill that is meaningful to me, though, is to be able to connect to people one-on-one in order for me to have good friendships, but also for me to have good patient-doctor relationships. I think that that is meaningful to me. But, you know, maybe that's not important to somebody else. Somebody who is not striving for, like, one-on-one conversations. You know, we all have our things that we value, and we need to go towards what we value ourselves. And I know that it's an individualistic take, it's a very Western take, but it's one of the only ways to manage capitalism, in my view. You know, we live in a system that is individualistic. I'm talking to, like, the people who are watching who are from the West, but, you know, I'm sure that there is a certain degree of that in other countries as well. And yeah, I want to focus on what I value, what my goals are, what my meaning is, and not what other people's meanings are. I'll need to pause now. Okay. So I've lost my train of thought, but I was thinking of, like, okay, well, we're talented at different things, but we don't need to be functional in order to live our lives, or not fully functional, at least. We want to aim towards being more functional, you know, having better mental health, but we can still take care of ourselves even if we fail to do certain things, you know. We can still have friends even though we are not fully healed, you know. We can still, you know, do things even though they might not be the most mature thing to do, you know. We want to keep sight of our paths, but we need to take our own path, you know. We need to see the paths that we are able to take and then go on them. And, you know, there was that, in the book she talks about the road not taken. And it's not the road less taken, right? That's a common interpretation of that poem, is that, oh, we emerged into a road. There's two roads, and there's one that's less trodden, and so he goes on the one that's less trodden, because that's the braver option, you know. But that's actually not the case in the poem. If you actually read the poem, The Road Not Taken, both of them are as worn. Both of them are worn. So that means that, well, some people, like half the people took one way and half the people took the other way. It's not that he chose the unique road, but the most important thing was that he chose it. It wasn't that he chose the unique road that was the important bit. It was that he chose it, and that he cannot regret now about the road he did not take. He needs to go and commit to his own road, because this has now become his road, you know? And it's not because it's a road that is more scary or more difficult or more unique. It's that he was able to make a choice that he was okay with. And when I finally read the poem in that sense, I was like, oh. So yes, I'm going to take a road. There are many roads, you know? And I need to commit to that road. But it's going to be mine in the end. It's going to be mine, nobody else's. And I might trip, I might stumble on the road, and it will be fine, you know? Because I chose to do this. And I'm on the road to self-fulfillment, not for self-growth. I mean, sure, I want self-growth, but it's also that maybe that road won't always be going like to the right place. Like, you know, maybe we'll never get to the place that the road is taking us, but we are on the journey on the road, you know, and we might as well enjoy the road while we're at it, you know, and not be so focused on the destination to becoming the successful person whose life is perfect. We need to just go on the road and enjoy the road, enjoy the journey. Make sure that that road corresponds to what's inside. And not be afraid to step outside the road if there is, like, you know, if there's another opportunity. But sometimes we need to remind ourselves to get back onto the path and work on things, you know, and persevere and do all that. But our roads are not the same in that maybe your destination, even if you're taking the same road, maybe your destination is different from mine. And maybe I will be much slower at getting to the destination than you are. And I think we need to be okay with that. And I think that at the moment a lot of people are not okay with that. And that's why I have so much pressure on myself of like, oh wow, why can't I do this, you know, which I should be able to do. Maybe I will never reach the destination, you know, maybe I'll never know how to drive. But you know, I can't know what I don't know yet, you know. So I just have to have the hope that, okay, I'll get there with some hard work. But I can't get down on myself for the fact that I cannot do it. It's hard for me because my brain is constantly being like, well, why can't you do this when everybody else can? And you've spent so many hours on it and yet you can't get there. Sometimes we have harder time than others. And I think that there's a lot of pressure put on in like Christian societies, I don't know, in society in general, about suffering being good, you know? Sometimes suffering is not good. Sure, hard work is important in order to get somewhere, because we won't be able to get anywhere without any work. But it should be, the path should be somewhat enjoyable, you know? there will be areas where you stumble, but maybe you'll learn something from it, and but we should all be more compassionate towards each other. That's basically what I'm getting to. My path metaphor is not 100% great because it's not mine, it's from the book, so I am not 100% sure I understand everything that she meant from that, but I do appreciate how she presents this self-compassionate that view that, like, okay, if you have ADHD, you do have a disability. And I think that INFPs are neurodivergent, and it is a disadvantage in the society to be an INFP, in my view, compared to some other types that are more suited to the sort of regimented structure that society wants us to live. And I think that we have different abilities than others, and why should our abilities be less important than somebody else's abilities? And why should our weaknesses be always frowned upon compared to like the weaknesses of other people, Why should we be discriminated against this way? And I do think that it is a sort of a discrimination, It's like, why should a lack of efficiency in organization mean that we are terrible humans compared to somebody who is really organized and efficient, who lacks a sense of imagination or hasn't read a book in 20 years, we all have different values, and why should the values of the society that we live in be dictating our worth as a person? We need to find our own meaning, our own value, and it does not need to be defined by anybody else. So, yeah, that was my angry rant for today. I had a similar discussion with my ISFJ friend because he was talking to somebody, and this person was telling him about, well, our identities and sexualities and gender identity and sorts of things like that. And he was saying, but why don't you try this? Why don't you try outside of what you identify as? Why don't you try this out? And that makes my ISFJ friend quite self-conscious, because my ISFJ friend's strength does not lie in trying new things per se, and I was like, well, yes, but do you really want to try something that will make you only feel uncomfortable and that won't get you towards your meaning in life? Sure, it's important to try new things, because it can make life more exciting, Maybe you want to try a new dish because it will give you a little bit of more excitement in your life. Like, you go to the restaurant and you order something different for once. That is maybe self-fulfillment for you. But maybe you have sensory issues where you know that you will dislike this dish. Then why are you taking it just to try something different? Or you go and try something different because, well, you want to challenge yourself in a certain way, and then it ends up being great. But it has to be on your own terms. You have to define that, your identity and your meaning for yourself. And somebody else can't tell you that your identity is wrong. I know that I'm talking to like the MBTI community and such, and the neurodivergent community. Somebody else can't just come in and invalidate the way that you identify yourself as. Somebody else can't say that your values are objectively wrong, you know. Your values could be harmful or that kind of thing to somebody else, and like they're allowed to say that, but you are not objectively wrong. You're not objectively, you know, a terrible person, or that you lack value because of a certain thing that you believe. You know, if I were listening to everybody around me, like, they'd be like, well, if I told people that I was asexual, they'd be like, well, you haven't tried it, so why, you know. And it's like, no, this is who I am. This is my choice. This is what, these kinds of relationships are those that are meaningful to me. What you have as idea of sexuality and relationships does not affect me. And I'm happy that you have a good life, but it's like, it's not my life. And so when my ISFJ friend was talking about how this one person was telling him that his view of his own identity was wrong, the thing is, my friend is just as valuable, and he's great, you know, but this made him feel insecure, you know. And I was like, no, you define your life, you create your own meaning. You shouldn't do something that you're uncomfortable with just because somebody told you that the way that you're thinking is wrong. Of course, everything that I'm saying has some nuance. Like, we shouldn't be stuck in our ways and such. But it needs to come from within you, you know? The meaning in your life cannot be dictated by somebody else. Your perspective, we should be open to other perspectives, right? But in the end, you know, we should be aiming towards creating our own perspective that is nuanced, that is that feels true to us, and that is informed by the outside world, right? But also that resonates true with us. We can't just do it according to what everybody else says is true and right. And I think that that's pretty much the difference between FI and FE. If we go back to MBTI terms, I guess. But so sure, we need to seek the truth outside of ourselves and through other people and all that. But we need to also look inside ourselves and like really think, like, what am I striving for? I'm striving towards self-fulfillment. And that self-fulfillment includes other people, you know? The self-fulfillment could mean like taking care of your family, you know? That could be one of your values. It could be taking care of your friends, being there for your friends. Your self-fulfillment does not need to be selfish, you know? So I know that I've gone a little bit all over the place. Sorry, I've been a little bit distracted by the wind around here. But I think it's important for us, for us to ask ourselves those questions, to actually dig deep inside ourselves, to work through certain things. Some people will have difficulties with certain things, and that is okay, because those things might not be so important to them as you would think they would be for somebody else, you know? So you cannot expect an autistic person, for example, to you know, to always act polite in every single situation, because they will have difficulties maybe with being accidentally rude. And believe me, they probably are working on it, but you shouldn't expect the autistic person to always be working on themselves when you aren't, you know? Because a lot of autistic people, for example, work on learning how to speak in a measured manner, and to read social cues, almost like it's a science, which, you know, it's not. And then it comes out wrong anyway. And we have different abilities with that. That's why it's considered a disability. But we don't expect all neurotypical people to be able to speak to autistic people. And why isn't that the case? You know? Why should autistic people have to do all the work? You know, a relationship goes both ways. And so we all have our different abilities. And just because somebody does not have the skill or the ability at the level that you would like them to, does not mean that they're not working on it, and does not mean that they should be working so much on it, you know? The consequences are theirs anyway to take. It's not yours. So I know that certain things that people do if people are acting in certain ways can harm other people, and I'm not talking about those situations. I'm talking about just things that are pretty harmless if you think about it. But some people get so angry about the fact that certain people can't do certain things, you know? Why do teachers get so angry at students not being able to do their homework, or to leave their homework in on time? Or, you know, why do certain employers get really mad at people coming in 1 minute late to work, you know? Or why are certain people so angry about somebody not learning how to drive a car at a certain pace, you know? Or why are certain people so angry about somebody saying an inadvertently wrong thing? You know, I think if we all open our perspectives a little bit, shift it to see other people as humans just like us, trying their best just like us, and not view them on a scale of growth, you know, as some people on the internet seem to think, then we could all choose our path towards self-development to become self-fulfilled, you know, or at least try to, you know, try to put some meaning into our lives that is actually meaningful to us. So yeah, I've been talking for way too long. I think that I need to go now. But I hope that you guys have a great day, and bye for now.